Well, joining me live from Jerusalem is Israeli Defense Force spokesperson Avital Leibovich. Well, as we've just heard, an RT office was hit and damaged, and you're saying that your precision bombing is only targeting terrorists. Can you explain to us why foreign media offices are being targeted? And also, we're hearing that no warning has been given of these attacks.
Well, this is a classic case where Hamas is using civilians, this time journalists, as human shields. We are talking about two media buildings indeed, but on the roofs of these media buildings, Hamas wisely positioned a whole system of communications and electronics for its own personal or operational work. We targeted only these antennas, these communication center. And I spread films earlier today showing this exactly. And you can see an accurate hit on the roof. None of the floors were targeted. Of course, there was a little bit of, as a result of the explosives, some windows shattered and so on. But the direction was not the floors, but rather the antennas, the communication centers on the roof.
Now, of course, by doing this, you are putting journalists at risk, and you, by definition, have accepted that you're using foreign journalists as human shields. Is the main aim really to prevent reporters doing their job? After all, I spoke to one earlier who is frightened to go to broadcast centres now to tell the world what is going on. Are you denying journalists the ability to tell the detail and truth of what is happening in Gaza? Is that your aim?
Well, if that were our aim, probably we would have closed the Gaza Strip and would have not allowed anyone to go in. But on the contrary, Gaza is open, and we want the journalists to come and see what's going on in Gaza. Now, the threat is not an Israeli threat. The threat is the fact that every day there's ongoing rocket fire from Gaza into Israel, an average of over 130 rockets a day. All of them almost are fired from civilian areas inside the Gaza Strip. Aren't the journalists afraid of this situation?
Are you giving warnings? Are you saying that you're actually giving warnings ahead of these bombings?
We are giving a very general warning, and I can repeat it here.
General warning is fairly ambiguous, isn't it? General warning. When you're knocking out communication centers, how can you give a warning, even if it is general?
We exploded an antenna on the roof. We didn't target any floor or any person in that building. I think that if a journalist chooses to locate himself near Hamas facility, that's a mistake.
Can you also explain that today, one of your bombs has just hit a house in Gaza, killing 10 civilians, including children. It was reportedly the home of a Hamas official who wasn't even there at the time. So clearly your intelligence was inaccurate, and yet innocents did die in that attack. Why did that happen?
Well, you know, innocents die many times on the Israeli side as well, and I think the coverage and your questions are unbalanced at all. After all, we are looking at more than a decade of rockets landing in Israel every day. It doesn't come from the sky, it came from Hamas, of Islamic Jihad and other organizations. We are now in an operation defending half of this country's population, and we are determined to continue with this operation until we bring some peace and quiet to this country. The equation is very clear. If there will be quiet in Israel, there will be peace and quiet in Gaza.
You say you're determined to continue this operation, a quote that you're going to expand this operation, which presumably means a ground invasion. Already we've heard from the UK that you would lose sympathy and support for your cause if you did that. Is that any concern?
Ground operation is only one option. We have many options in addition to that. Currently, there is no such decision to launch a ground operation, but if there will be one, we are ready and deployed for action.
And what's the aim of this ground invasion, bearing in mind you did do a ground invasion 4 years ago, and where has that led us to?
Well, 4 years ago, it was a totally different situation. 4 years ago, Hamas didn't have Fajr 5 Iranian-manufactured rockets that can hit all the way to the city of Tel Aviv. 4 years ago, Hamas didn't have the drone capabilities, drones that can be manned with explosives and explode themselves in the Israeli skies. This is a whole different situation. We will do whatever we need to do, ground or air, in order to protect half of this country's population. Because naturally, Israel, just like any other country in the world, has the basic right of self-defense.
Your Interior Ministry says that one of the aims is to send the region, Gaza, back to the Middle Ages, which really implies you're targeting an entire people there. What's the message behind that statement?
I'm not a spokesperson for the Minister of Interior. I'm a spokesperson from the IDF. And one of the goals of the IDF here is to cripple the capabilities of the different organizations in Gaza, cripple them of their huge arsenals, an arsenal that they built for years and years. They smuggled weapons through hundreds of tunnels, and Gaza has served in the last couple of years as the backyard of many deserts in Africa, making it a lot more convenient to smuggle weapons inside the country.
You're not a spokesman for the Interior Ministry, but perhaps you could at least give us some sort of idea of what they're implying here. You must be on the same message board with them, aren't you, in effect, having the same message? What do they mean by that? Returning to the Middle Ages?
Once again, I'm not a spokesperson for that ministry. The goal of this operation, Pillar of Defense, is divided to two. The first part is to defend the Israeli population, 3.5 million Israelis under current rocket danger for the past decade. The second part is to make sure these terror organizations are getting a very severe blow for their arsenals, for the huge amounts of rockets, launchers, launching sites, so we can live peacefully and quietly, just like any other country in the world.
You make a very persuasive argument, but of course what the international community is really concerned about now is the increasing number of civilian deaths. Now, last night I spoke with one of your colleagues, Josh Hampman. He claimed that Hamas is actually rounding up civilians to shield targets you're about to bomb. Now, how can Hamas possibly know your exact targets and respond quickly enough?
Hamas is targeting only Israeli cities. You are more than welcome to spend just 2 hours in one of the biggest Israeli cities that were targeted for the past years, either Beersheba or Ashkelon and Ashdod. Each of these cities have more than 200,000 people. Did you ever feel what it's like to run into a shelter and have 15 seconds to do it, or to raise children and a family inside a shelter, a protected room, and sleep there night after night? This is not something normal. This should not be this way.
Well, of course, we can ask the Gardens the same question, of course. But in the meantime, thank you very much indeed for joining us live.
No, wait a minute. I beg to differ.
Okay.
I beg to differ, because you can't make this equation. Hamas is targeting civilians. We are not looking to target civilians. We are targeting terrorists.
And
the
why
equation
is
not
it?
in place.
So can I ask you then, the core reason why this is happening is because of Israeli policy towards the Gazans, the way they've been suffering from this blockade. That has been the provocation, hasn't it?
What blockade? There is a border to Egypt, the Rafah border. It's open. Do you know that every day we allow patients from Gaza to get hospitalization in Israel despite the rocket fire? Do you know that we supply electricity to Gaza? We supply truckloads with supplies every day. Even today, as a matter of fact, more than 130 trucks entered Gaza with a variety of supplies according to the request, despite of the rocket fire. What other country in the world would act this way?
Live from Jerusalem, Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson Avital Leibovich, thank you very much indeed for your time.